been trying to guess what his cosplay is going to be for this one, and I oh, hello, he's done it, and he.
Gosh.
You've got to talk.
Oh, yes. Hello.
Have you had a haircut in the meanwhile?
Don't wake your mad cow.
Oh, no.
Right, let's go for it, ladies.
Let's go, girls.
Yeah, thank you. At least one of you knew what that was a reference to. Hello, welcome to season 21, Talking About Who. This is 4 of 4. It's the thrilling conclusion. Ooh. You can like us, you can subscribe to us, you can get notifications about us. You can do whatever you like, really. This is a free world in some ways. I'm Paul P-Bal. I'm joined by...
Jumped in prematurely there, sorry.
And Widdicombe's child was like, me next.
Hello.
Jason gets it.
We messed up. Hello, it's Jason.
Honestly.
Is anyone else? Anyone else there? Anyone else? This is just me and Jason today.
It's the two Jameses here. Still being upstaged by Jason.
It's double jeopardy as far as I'm concerned.
You should have done I am James and I am Jameis. Spoilers, folks, spoilers. We haven't got there yet.
Oh.
Previously on Doctor Who and the Talking About in reversed order. Frontiers is a rock bottom with 9 points, followed by Planet of Fire on 11.5, Warriors of the Deep on 12.5. Who'd have thought Warriors would be the bottom? Awakening on 18.5. Resurrection was our leader, and now it's second place on 21.5. And our current victor is Caves of Androzani on 28. Sort of perfect story that isn't perfect, but you give a perfect score to maybe. We've got one story left this season, and it's a big one. So is it going to be the one which takes the lead? It is the twin dilemma. I mean, seriously, why I'm not doing those voiceovers for films, like it started in a barn.
We have our very own James Earl Jones sat right here with us.
Yeah, we're often mistaken for each other. He's in a pod. So
he's in a pod.
There we go. I saw that one drop in Cardiff. I said, what clunk then? Who's introducing our season finale then?
Is there no hardback for this one?
There is a hardback for it, but it's in the stately home with mum and dad. Or it's been destroyed in a controlled explosion to stop it reproducing. I don't know.
Just in case, it's been put into a lead-lined box in one of those massive warehouses, like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
It's like when people send curses, like cursed things in the post, and it's like, if you open this, you will unleash your curse. It's like, oh, it's a twin dilemma. Anyway.
So it is the end of season 21, but it is the start of Colin Baker's tenure as the Doctor, and there's more than double trouble at play here. In our last story, we were talking about how the quality of the season has been questionable at times, and then we kind of, in the last story, where Jason rolled out the 10 for the last story, the quality was very different, and sadly,
I won't be rolling the 10 out for this one.
He's going to give it 11.
Yeah.
Sadly,
yes, I can.
In this final story of the season, we have an absolute clunker of a story, which doesn't really send the season out on a high. It's kind of a weird thing that I kind of wish it had ended on Caves, and then they'd done the regeneration, and then had time to then, develop the story and get the characters in a better place. But here we have this story where the Doctor starts off with some sort of regenerative crisis. He attacks Peri. He says that he then wants to become a hermit. All the while, you've got these two twins, funnily enough, that are kidnapped by another Time Lord. They're being forced to do some complex mathematical equations for a slug-like creature called Nestor. The Doctor ends up sort of blundering along into the situation, recognizes his old friend, and then gets involved. That's pretty much the entire plot in a few seconds, and that's about as exciting as it gets.
It's interesting. I think we've discussed regeneration a few times on these now, but this is the absolute nadir of what you shouldn't do with a regeneration. And Doctor Who slightly fixates about the effects of a regeneration and acting crazy. And what that does essentially is it just pollutes the story, because it means even if your story's not terribly good, you've then got this added thing of Doctor Who acting really weird. Time of the Rani, if Sylvester regenerated and he was up and he was back on it straight away, I'm not saying it would be an amazing story, but it takes out some of that terminable, who am I, what am I doing, and it just feels like it's so trodden. There's a magic to like a robot where he's just a bit weird for a few minutes and then off with the story. That's all now you need to get to know the Doctor. And what you have at the end of the Twin Dilemma is you don't know the Doctor. So you then got the gap for the next year to come back or not come back. Well, I doubt people rose or fell on this as to whether they'd come back next year. But it's not a great introduction. It's terrible, really. The character. I don't know at what point anyone thought going to the nth degree, and it's the violent nth degree again with the regeneration, would have that scene, sort of skipping and going into monologue, sorry, that scene where Peri recovers from being throttled by him and he can't remember throttling her, and she's on the floor going, you can't remember, and holding herself, is really dark. There's a sort of rapey murder element to it that's just like, oh God, this is Doctor Who. The Doctor shouldn't even within his, and I know he's like, oh, that's why I've got to become a hermit now. Oh God, it's just terrible. He shouldn't be throttling his assistant. It's just not good. It just doesn't make any sense. If he's unbalanced or tired or something, because I mean, Castrovalva goes on forever with Davison basically wanting to sleep. I mean, we all did during Castrovalva, but this is too far the other. It's just strange and violent, and Doctor Who shouldn't be throttling his assistant on the console room floor. It's just weird.
I agree. It's entirely misplaced, and it's misplaced not just in the way that it's being portrayed, but it's misplaced in the position that it's put in, because you come off the previous story, Doctor's regenerated, and that's acceptable for us. We can accept all of that. Take your season break at that point, stop, and come back in the start of the new season and introduce your new Doctor then. I mean, I don't think even if we'd done that with the way this story was written, we would have really loved the Doctor any earlier than we did. But you're left in that sort of period between the end of this season and the beginning of the next one thinking, it's going on here. I mean, literally, it's so alien to even the viewer. He's alien on the screen, and it's alien to us. And I can remember at the time watching this on its first viewing, and I'm thinking, what have they done? What's going on here? Because this literally is just the wrong place for it to happen. And then take that break, and then bring him back, obviously. And in some respects, the character that comes back in season 22 doesn't even bear any resemblance in some respects to the characterization of the Doctor that we get in this story, because it is so alien. And yes, he settles towards the end of the story, but it's just so wrong on so many levels. And it's about that time, I think, where I realize that JNT is making far too much of the regeneration and putting far too much emphasis into it. Yes, it's a great time to capture some headlines, but captured it all in the wrong way for this.
It's funny because when I first saw Kay Zandrazzani, it was on the 92 repeat, which went straight into Revelation of the Daleks the week after. And strangely, that works. I knew it wasn't the next story, but you could view it as the next story. There wasn't any real need. He'd regenerated, and you can accept that he's changed his costume. Even to an extent, now, if you watch the start of Attack of the Cybermen, they talk about him still being a bit confused and calling her Susan and something like that. So you could even be forgiven for saying, actually, Kay Zandrazzani, then watch Attack of the Cybermen, because he's still talking about the regeneration. I actually quite like the idea of having a story with the Doctor at the end. So if it had been done properly, it would have been great, because it would have set you off to be excited about the next year. I mean, first regeneration, obviously you have the two stories, and then the rest of it's pat. It was different because it's different lengths of season and all that. But I like the idea that rather than saying it's the end of the season, the Doctor's changed, you've got to wait a year to see what the next one's like. I do like the idea that they're like, well, we'll finish it. This is what you're going to get. But then it's like, they don't give you what you're going to get. They absolutely. He's horrible. I mean, he's pompous. He's cowardly. He does lots of awful, cowardly things. He's spiteful. He's argumentative, and it's awful because Colin is actually really good, and he's doing a great performance, but he's doing a great performance of bad material. And it sort of breaks my heart. You think, oh, why didn't they just sit and think? First episode, even he's a bit, out of sorts and can't work out what's going on. But then just pick it up. He could have met Maurice Denham earlier, who could have been like, I'm a Time Lord that you've regenerated, and they could have had quite a nice story together. And that would have been lovely to have those two characters doing more. Because, I mean, Maurice is just a jewel in an ocean of awfulness in some ways. It's just like, why he ended up being the guest star in this and not something else is a heartbreaker. But it just seems that I think that will come onto other faults, I'm sure. But I think the biggest core of the twin dilemma failing is its lack of understanding of what it's doing about the Doctor, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it's come off the back of such a fantastic performance in Peter's final story. And you've gone from that to the absolute opposite in the next story, where you've got a character playing the Doctor who is so unlikable and so unrecognizable that this is where it isn't Doctor Who to a degree for me. And we talked about, Kay Zandrazzani being an un-Doctor Who-like story because of some of the violence in it. But this is an un-Doctor Who-like story because that's not the Doctor that's in the TARDIS. That's just not the right person.
I mean, it even ends with the line, I'm the Doctor, whether you like it or not. That's a really bad line to end such an awful story on, because I was sat there going, not. Because, and I love Colin, and I think he's often underrated as the Doctor, and his performances get better once they start to sort of settle down with what they're doing with the character. And he does get darker stories, Revelation, being one of those. But there is, I mean, he has such an energy in this story, and he's really going for it. But he, like you say, it needed someone to actually sit down and go, actually, what are we doing with the Doctor in this? Because, 1 minute he's throttling her, then he's like quoting poetry, then he's like, I'm going to become a hermit, then he's doing something. They just don't seem to be able to sort of nail it down and go, okay, this is the kind of Doctor. And there are, David Tennant does that whole speech of, I don't know what kind of Doctor I am, and in his sort of regeneration story. So they do make more of it as regenerations go, but you normally get a feel for the Doctor by the end of their first episode. at the end of the Pertwee's first episode, he's nicked a Bessie-like car. He's got he nicks the clothes from the hospital. He's setting himself up for the kind of doctor he is. The same with Tom. You kind of, by the end of the first episode, you know where you are. I mean, Peter Davison did have a snooze for most of Castrovalva, but you kind of got there at the end. But with Colin at the end, that statement is so, I don't know. I mean, his first line about Peri being egotistical, he is like that at the end of the episode. It's like, I'm the doctor whether you like it or not. It's like, sticking two fingers up and saying, this is what I'm going to be like. And you're sat there wondering, well, if that is the doctor now, why would I want to wait a year? Why would I come back? And like you say, when he does come back, it's slightly different, and you get a slightly different version of the doctor. But it's like, why cram it on at the end, especially after such a strong performance from Davison, to have this as your end of season first story for Colin? It just, yes, if it had been brilliant, it would have been a good hook for the next season, but it just wasn't. And someone must have sat there and gone, yeah, put it out.
And I mean, having not established Peri particularly strongly in the last two stories, we now have the most unbelievable dynamic here of him sort of killing her 1 minute, not killing her the next, and sort of expecting her to just fall in line with it, and then she gets upset if she thinks he's dead, even though you think, well, why would you be bothered at this point? Because he's been foul to you. There's no kind of, I don't know. I know Doctor Who isn't always great on the emotional payoff, but essentially he has just sacrificed his last life for her. So you could either take it that she'd be incredibly grateful that he just saved her life, and that would be the launching point, or if he was a bit messed in the head, he'd be like, I've just killed myself for you and I don't like it. But neither of those things offer themselves up in this. And you have those strange beginnings of the arguments where she's like, oh, you're a manic depressive, blah, 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 egocentric. And yeah, all those sort of rows kicking up. But then when Hugo's like, I'm going to shoot him, she's like, oh, no, don't do that. He's a lovely guy. You're like, bitch, please, you've just been rowing with him incessantly. Where's this point? And like when he's picking his outfit, she's like, you're not serious. That's horrible. Yuck. And then she comes in with her outfit and he's like, yuck. And it's like, oh, what's happening here? This isn't even convincing as a relationship. And it's such a shame, because it should have just been, she should have been quite sort of assured where she was at in this. And it should have led through from that point, really.
I mean, normally you have the companion to guide the doctor through the regeneration. There's that continuity of, we've got the companion from the previous doctor, but like you say, it sets up an even worse dynamic than she had with Peter. We were talking about how she was sarcastic and snippy, and now you're launching into season 22 where they're just bicker the whole time, and he treats her really badly in some of those stories.
And when you consider that she's only been traveling with him now for one story, essentially, they didn't really have a huge amount to do in Planet of Fire. And you're right, he's throttling her, he's doing all sorts of things, but she is defending him, and it's a mess. The whole setup feels a mess. And if I were the new companion at this stage, I'd be thinking, what have I set myself up for here? What am I doing? I'm trapped in space with a loony who's trying to kill me, but it's okay, I'll stick up for him, I'll defend him. There's no rhyme, absolutely no rhyme, no reason behind it. And it's so misplaced. I am staggered, even to this day, that the high ups there didn't look at that and go, we can't even put this out. I mean, it's that bad. I would actually have considered not even putting the story out, full stop, just gone straight to Attack of the Cybermen and given that as the starting point.
Is it a sign maybe of the lack of interest from upstairs by this point in Doctor Who? And I know they wouldn't often interfere with the daily sort of running of it. I know there was sort of questions back in Pertwee about, policemen or Doctor saying, oh, until the Master destroys me or I destroy him. There were questions about, I don't like, this isn't very Doctor Who-y in its way. At this point, has Doctor Who become that much a part of the furniture that when the scripts go upstairs, there's like, is it 25 minutes? That's all right. Do what you like. We trust you to knock it out. It is remarkable because you would think the focus of launching a new Doctor would be a real sort of thinking point, a real sort of turner of, okay, what character are we doing with this and how are we launching this? And the idea was that he was going to be a little bit more alien, and the thought process was that he would be like, you know, don't care that a human's died, but a butterfly's been crushed is sad. And that's quite an interesting way of doing it. That's sort of what they did when they misfired with Peter Capaldi as well. But it's okay to do that, but you've got to be very clever with how you do that. And so just by having him be unpleasant and aggressive and blame it on the regeneration for a whole month. And I suppose the other problem that it comes down to is it's not even framed with a story that's like, the story behind it's great. So actually they've buggered the dynamic up here with Doctor Who and Peri, but the story behind it's great. If only it weren't a regeneration story, this would be a classic. It's not. It's two annoying twins and a giant slug trying to spread his eggs. That's sort of about it, really.
And some iffy birdmen.
Well, the birdmen are working for the big slug, aren't they? I mean, that opening scene is, I can't, I mean, the opening scene having, again, it's really weird because I just think I, you know, as a television thing, last week Doctor Who woke up from his regeneration. We then open with a really dreary 80s neon sort of set of those two bloody wooden kids being really unlike, go, mother is a fool. And it's kind of like, well, mother doesn't appear and dad buggers off and leaves you on his own. What is the setup here? This is a really strange, what is this? And their security, like, oh, we're always worried about the security of those kids. But if you can just teleport into the living room and take them.
I was going to say, it's almost like the parents left the front door open and, you know,
in the hope.
Please take them, please.
And the dad comes home and he's like Inspector Morse. He's like a space futuristic Inspector Morse. Oh, there's something. Oh, I know why. I know what's happened here. I'm going to phone the police and I'm going to tell them exactly what's happened. What?
I mean, I know originally they wanted 2 girls, and John said he'd rather have a couple of boys. But it's also that awkward thing where they say, and I'm not offending people here with speech impediments or anything, but I'm Romulus and I'm Remus. It's really awkward at that point because it's like, oh, no. I genuinely, if you can't pronounce your R's, I don't mean that in a horrible way, but I am Romulus and I am Remus is a really cringeworthy moment. Of many, I mean, there's many in this story, but that's
if it were being played for comedy, it might actually lift it a little bit. It just reminds me of the Only Fools and Horses.
Only for crying. Back Ellen Wadney. Yeah, I mean, Nick Pegg says he always likes to think of the space police universe being like the team from Earthshock, the team from Twin Dilemma, and the Star Cops all being in the same universe, and what a great and that is kind of, imagine that. Imagine the box sets you could get from that. So it is very Star Copsy, I think. They're sort of Helen Blatch and Kevin McNally and all that little setup. So that's quite sweet. Kevin, I think, is really good in this. I mean,
brilliant in this. It's good to see him, and I'm glad, you know, in more recent times he's come back and had another shot at, you know, playing a sort of companion-esque character.
Yeah, absolutely companion material, no question about it. Companion material. Why didn't they pick up on that?
Because he got the glittery jacket. They're like, can't have the glittery jacket and the multicolored coat. This is crazy. Not once Nicola's got the neons on. This is going to strobe. It doesn't. I mean, I can remember back in the day when I was at Time Tot. This was a Woolworths exclusive. They absolutely did Woolworths over on this one, didn't they? They're like, oh, we want one Doctor Who story released on VHS, but it's only available from us. And like, oh, how about the Twin Dilemma? That's a really good one. It's a regeneration story. Everyone loves that. Great, we'll replicate that and get stuck with it. I think they were meant to have the Aztecs, and they decided that they'd give them a colour one. Because I think they're better having the Aztecs.
I was going to say Aztecs would have been a much better choice than this.
No question about that.
Yeah, I mean, go on. Sorry.
No, go for it.
I was going to say I don't have anything sort of more constructive to add. It just, I mean, Kevin is good. I like the sort of interaction when he realizes it's his old sort of mentor, and but the plot is so thin and it's so weak. It just, the thing is, I only watched it like 2 days ago, and already I'm having to use my notes because I'm like, what did happen? Something about some twins. They were whinging about something, and they got taken away, and then there was a giant slug and a couple of birdmen. It's there's no substance to it. We talked about the last story being great. The one before that was like wallpaper paste, and this is again, it's just dull. It's really difficult to find some sort of redeeming feature that goes, that here's a spark that I saw, that I knew this was going to be, a great tenure for Colin, or, could see the dynamic of these stories working. It feels like you've just taken a huge step backwards from the last story at a point where you should be stepping up because it's the season finale, which is, it just, on so many levels, it's just a mistake.
I mean, Edwin Richfield gives a good. I mean, you don't get to see him, but he's great vocally as Mestor. I like the death by embolism sort of thing. That's an interesting sort of. I mean, I like the Jacondan design. I like the realization of the sort of the bird makeup. I think it's actually quite well done. Model work, I think, is really good in this. It's interesting. It's not things that you don't watch it and admire parts of it. You have to go and search for things that aren't awful, and that's difficult because it shouldn't really be like that.
And the direction as well. So you've just come off a real high of something a bit out of the box direction wise. And you're back to that. You are back to those sort of 80s beige sets and the beige sort of directing and the beige sort of, everything is overlit and it's all just a bit wrong and doesn't add anything to the story.
It's the Peter Moffat, very safe, got it in time sort of directing. There's no danger of having an exciting shot or something that lifts this. I mean, imagine the horrors if they'd given Peter Moffat, Kate Androzani and Graham Harper Twin Dilemma. I mean, it could have happened. Imagine
it, and it might have been a completely different setup for us. I mean, imagine him, doing something special with the Twin Dilemma. We'd have had, all sorts of different things, I'm sure.
I'm not going to say the expression, but I don't think you can polish it.
No, I don't think so. It's
because, I mean, Maurice Denham comes back for Doctor in the Paradise of Death on radio. But yeah, it just feels a hideous waste that he's in this. And it's nice because that is a nice idea when you have that sort of Professor Chronotis thing, or it's slightly more, because they're all friend, and it should be. I mean, he does it remarkably well with the ending where he's, again, it's a sacrifice and he can't regenerate. And there should be more pathos because the Doctor has just regenerated and is starting a new life. His friend has died and hasn't got, there should be some kind of, and it doesn't feel like it goes into the place it should. It's like you say, that ending of I'm the Doctor, whether you like it or not, it's very bold and it's very brave to say, I don't care, I am the Doctor. it's kind of like, but it's just come after a complete shitstorm of awful behaviour. It's a bit Boris, I'm Prime Minister, whether you like it or not. Well, there's a lot of people going to put their hand up here and say, well, actually not. There's what you've done that's nice in the last hour and a half. I mean, I suppose the other plus is when they land on the abandoned asteroid that Tegan hasn't turned up there to rejoin them.
It might have lifted the story.
they do mention her, don't they? And they play her theme tune. He calls her Tegan at one point.
Yeah,
could have happened. She might have been hanging on the asteroid and
a plane crashed.
she got caught like time flight and travel to the asteroid, and then she's there and she just wants to get home, and it's like, here we go again.
It's like, what are these giant eggs?
she had a view of the future and decided it really wasn't worth her time.
Yeah, it's difficult because again, and I did have this rant, I think, on the gunfighters, in that you know that the twin dilemma is always rocking at the bottom of a poll, always going to be rattling at the bottom there because it's nobody's favourite. No, I don't think anyone who's in it would pick it as a favourite, even if it was the only one they did.
Do you want some poll stats? I can give you some. I've got some poll stats just on that.
I thought you said you got your poll tax. I was like,
No,
a bit late.
Yeah, I've gone back to the 80s. I've just paid my poll tax.
I would say even your poll tax would be more exciting than this story.
So, in 1998, Doctor Who magazine ranked all of the stories up until that point. And
I mean, they didn't rank the ones that came after.
No, they waited. They have got the time-space visualizer. They could have done that. It came second from bottom in that poll.
What was bottom?
I won't tell you because you will be upset. However,
what was bottom?
Dimension in Time. We came bottom. I know. I told
what?
you.
What?
So
hang on.
Right.
1998. The people of Doctor Who magazine were that stupid. They put Dimensions in Time bottom. Is that what you were telling me?
Right. I will redeem it slightly. So in 2009, there was
Dimensions in Time was top.
And they took Dimensions in Time out because they decided it wasn't canon. And so this story was bottom. And then in 2014, they did another poll. And once again, this story was bottom of the pile. And across all age groups, it was bottom story. So there we go. It's got a proud history of being
a bottom.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for your bottom history there.
There we go.
Because again, child acting is a difficult thing, and some people, there are some kids that can really act. There are some kids who can act, but they're a bit annoying. And I'm not going to hate on the Conroe twins here, but they can either act and they are annoying. There's a sort of, you have to be able to pull through it. I mean, they'd have probably done better getting slightly older kids who looked younger, because I think, Keith Jane, obviously in Awakening, is older than he looks. He looks a younger, that's a big flop for it, really. That the twins of the dilemma. You're not worried about them. You're not worried about them getting through the adventure, are you? When he's like, I'll rip out your brains, I'll rip out your minds, whatever, and just I go, well,
all right.
It's going to move things on a bit quicker. I don't mind, get hulling. No, it's difficult to pull positives out from this, and I hate it because it's my permanent rant of I don't like to preconceive something as being great or something as being bad. I think this video, without being grandizing, has been a bit of a voyage of discovery on some which I thought were better than others that weren't. And Twin Dilemma, people always say is crap. without fail. So to watch it and be like, yeah, no, it really is. It's just, it is. Dexter came by about 10 minutes into part 1. He went, how's Twin Dilemma? I was like, it's tedious. And there's another 3 episodes.
You didn't force him to watch.
Oh, no. That's what he's doing now. He's watching it whilst we're reviewing it. See if it's as bad as I said. So do we have, beyond our polls, do we have any facts on the Twin Dilemma?
Yeah, there's a couple. Unsurprisingly, Peter Moffat described it as the worst serial he'd done. Ringing endorsement. Colin said he didn't like the twins because he said that their acting was wooden. And
Well, I hope we got reunited with them at London Film and Comic Con to just reiterate that.
I know they were there, and apparently I didn't meet them, but apparently they were very, very nice, and they were, going to people. Do you like this story? I think there was a lot of people being very nice.
Do you know? I'm always at pains again to say if you say someone gives a crap performance, it doesn't mean you're saying that they are a crap person. Yeah. There are lots of lovely people that can't act. There are lots of horrible people that can act. So it's the other way back as well. You could say someone's giving a great performance and they're horrible.
J&T and Eric disagreed on the choice of the first story. So there were 2 stories they were vying for, and this is the one that they ended up with. Wonder what the other one was. Colin Baker also plays the voice of the Freighter Control in part 3, and he's credited for that. And the cat badge was apparently made by Susie Trevor. That he has. But yeah, that was my amazing facts.
Wow. Your Tegan wig's coming out at the side now, so you're getting like a sort of half mullet.
We do get a new title sequence. Well, a revised title sequence for this story as well, don't we?
Coloured. In your face thing.
Good old Sid Sutton. Got a lot of time for Sid.
But it's someone else that does the extra bit, isn't it? That puts the overlay on.
It is, you're quite right. Because wasn't it Sid's Starscape before? Didn't he?
Yeah, it's Sid's Starscape, and having watched it 6 million times, the name is now eluding me as to who the other person is that does the rainbow remix. Jason's now Googling frantically so he can look as if he knows.
Terry Handley.
No.
Who does the title sequence alongside Sid in this one?
That's what Jason's Google saying anyway. Put in the comments below.
Good job he had his browser open while we were talking.
I can see all the pop-ups reflecting in his glasses though, so I don't know what else he got open.
That's why he doesn't normally wear them on the recording.
There are a couple of twin dilemmas there, I think.
It's all right, because I can read the stats as James is giving them out, so it's easy then.
It's on the dark web. Terrible.
Maybe the original choice for a story was... No, I was going to say quarks, but I'm not going to that mucky mode. Okay, I think... And again, this is it's a terrible end to a season. This is a terrible launch of a Doctor. What scores do we have, Doctor Who and Twin Dilemma?
Jason, I'm going to let you go first.
Oh no, I'm actually, because you're in cosplay on this one, James, I am going to allow you to have the first starter on this one.
Jason, I entirely insist that you go first.
Oh. I don't want to, because it's not going to be great. Okay, I'm not really sure where to start. Okay, so Twin Dilemma, and it really shouldn't have been where it was. And in fact, I don't think it should have even been. There aren't any redeeming features for this story. And whilst James has given us lots of stats through the course of this chat, telling us how this is the bottom story, I don't want to run to form on this, but it genuinely really isn't terribly good at all. There are 1 or 2 things that you say, could say that the models are good and there's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but honestly, this is so dire. So I'm not going to give a very long explanation as to what I'm about to score the score on. But I believe I'm going to the lowest I can possibly go to with a score on this one. And I am afraid that this becomes only the third story in our journey where I have scored a 1.
A 1? Wow.
I want to know how many people are actually going to notice the situation right now. Jason hasn't.
You see, as I've said a number of times, I can't look at you guys when I'm doing my summary, so I don't see the hot swap go on there. You're flip-flopping there, James, I see.
Oh, it is a hot swap.
What's a hot swap not?
Exactly. Okay. So
Let's just say you could have given it 0. There isn't a. You can 0 to 10.
Can I? Is 0 an actual possibility here?
Yeah, it's a score, isn't it?
Can I revise?
Oh,
Because I didn't realise that. I thought 1 was the lowest we could go.
What made you think that?
Okay, I'm going to revise my score, folks, because quite honestly, I don't think I can give this any score then. If I'm allowed to go that low, let's go.
Jason, you can always go low. You know that.
I do indeed. So I am going there. Can I ask for my score to be, this is the very first time I'm ever asking for my score to be deleted. I am going in with a 0. If it's allowed, I'm doing it. 0 for this story.
it's controversial.
Get her. She's not at her Cocoa Pops.
I was going to say we'll be revisiting season 20 and get a few more zeros.
Halcyon days of Omega and the Ergon.
I'll be honest, I would love to have that now as a story. I don't mind talking about that. Compared to this, no, 0. We're on it.
Right. So, second twin.
Hello.
Hello. Are you Jamulus? Jamulus and Gemus. Gemus is gone.
Gemus is frozen in the background and asked me to step in. I can't give it a 0, but I do understand why you have given it a 0. There's a few guest performances in this I do like, and particularly Kevin McNally. I think the story itself is awful. I think the characterization of the Doctor is awful. I think the dynamic between him and Peri is awful. I think as a season finale, it's dreadful. But you know what? For old time's sake, and this is my lowest score, I am going to just give it 0.5 more than Jason did. So I'm going to give it half. You can't see his face.
I is shocked.
To be honest, I put 1 on mine as well, but as you're going to 0, I'm going to go to 0.5.
If it's allowed, I'm down there.
I don't know where this idea that you couldn't give something 0 come from. Well, you mad old queens. It's not like it's a book. If this were the Eurovision, as James Newman discovers, you can very much get 0.
Oh, bless him.
From that ash did the phoenix of Sam Ryder rise.
Exactly.
That's all right. We can live with that. I did cry though. But anyway, both times. Okay. Twin Dilemma. I think it's better than Case Van Rosani. I just saw your wig had come out of his. Tegan has come back, and you're not going to be able to see this vision in a bob that I can see.
This is my doubling up as my Tegan wig.
What a Javanka. Anyway, I'm not going to be quite as stingy as those two because, you know, Kevin McNally and Maurice Denham, come on, folks. So, here's Twin Dilemma. 1 point. But does that mean it's our season winner? build some tension here, folks. Let's build some tension up. 7 stories entered this contest. Only one of them could win. Okay. In 7th place, with 1.5 points, it's the Twin Dilemma.
Oh,
And our lowest
twin.
ever scored
That
story
is our lowest ever
in
score.
the entire run of Talking About.
That's an achievement.
It is an achievement.
In 6th position, on 9 points, is Frontius. In 5th position, on 11.5, is Planet of Fire, which means our halfway marker, the halfway point on this season, in 4th place, 12.5 points, Warriors of the Deep. Come on.
Wow.
Who would have foreseen the Merca marching to middle place here?
Not a chance. When we first did that, and the scores were pretty low on that one, but I didn't ever believe it would be halfway through the scores. That's quite a shock, that one.
The Merca is looking down on 3 other stories here, folks. Anyway, 3rd place goes to The Awakening on 18.5. Our runner-up is Resurrection of the Daleks on 21.5. And the season winner, Quelle Surprise, is the Case of Androzani on 28 points.
Yay!
Literally from top to bottom in the space of a week.
Wow.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we revisited season 22 a couple of times. We did the review of it and we did the Blu-ray sets. And actually, I know violence and all that sort of debate. So there are much better stories there, Colin, than he gets with Twin Dilemma. Twin Dilemma is just such a misfire on opener and the season closer. It sort of beggars belief that anyone would have thought, let's launch our Doctor and leave the viewers wanting more.
Yeah.
And you sort of feel that potentially that launch for him sets him on an uncertain path to a degree, because see, it's a well-troubled era for the entire production. But when you get off to such a shaky start as something like the Twin Dilemma, it's very difficult sometimes to regain, because there will have been audience back in the day that would have said, he's not for me. That's not my Doctor, or it's not a Doctor I can associate with, or I can, feel anything with. I'm kind of switching off. And I kind of feel that he gets off to the wrong footing. And I think there's a struggle, even though season 22 is there's some really good, strong stories in there we've already talked about. It's not the greatest of starts, and it's a shame for Colin, I think, because he deserves so much better than that.
And this would have obviously been the reference point for a lot of the writers for the Doctor and Peri, because this would be the available story that you could see to get an idea of their dynamic. So I don't know to what extent that also sort of wrong-footed people who were writing for the next season using this as a reference point. All comes down to production, doesn't it? Because producers, script editors should have been hands-on, saying this is where we're going, this is what we want to do, this is the characterization we want. And anyway, thank you very much, gentlemen.
An absolute pleasure, as always.
It is, as always, an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, I think you look more Janet than Janet does now. It's a bit frightening. That's it now. I'll be charging £25 to write his name on anything.
I'm using this for our, the Centennial review. I'll cosplay Janet.
I can hardly wait.
I'll tell you what, you could end up being the best thing here.
No, you've got to cosplay as Sophie. Fair's fair. No, I'll come as Jodie. Anyway, like, subscribe, follow, do all those magical things. This has been season 21, and we shall be back next week for more.